Hello, you're watching TelecomTV. My name is Martin Warwick and we are at ONS 2014 here in Silicon Valley in the United States, in California. And I'm talking with Neela Jacques, who is the Executive Director of OpenDaylight. Do you think that the software industry in general, in our industry, is actually undergoing a sort of major shift in a way that's never been done before? Or is it some more inching towards some kind of ideal?
What's interesting today is that we're seeing a hybrid model that has appeared. If you look at most of the innovation that's happened in the space, it's been happening in something that I call open plus. What's happened, unfortunately, is in the proprietary model, over time, it's hard to continue to innovate over time. And so we see these wonderful platforms that come up that add a lot of value, but then they end up getting disrupted by startups. On the other hand, if you look at what's happened on the open source model, over time, open source has continued to innovate. If we look at Linux today, it has so many capabilities that it didn't have in the past. It's being used on cell phones and cars. It's being used in satellites. It's amazing, all the varied uses of Linux. So I think we're going through a shift more broadly in the industry, whereby what you're finding is people are cooperating to build a substrate, a common substrate, and then you're seeing these applications that are being built on top, which is really where the value is.
Let's look at, you mentioned the open source platform. Tell us about the move from that to OpenDaylight.
If you look at within the networking industry, we've had a challenge. We have been very much fragmented and siloed as an industry. And you have to recognize that overall in the data center, as well as in campus, as well as on the telco side, you've got a shift towards greater automation. You've got a shift towards greater abstraction in the space to be able to enable a new type of automation. The challenge is that when you get towards greater automation, when you have a centralization of intelligence, which is what you're looking to do, the costs of fragmentation go up tremendously. And so in a world in which you program every gear, every piece of switch, it doesn't really matter if you've got 5 different switches, 5 different routers made by different people, because you're programming them independently. Now, when you've got this idea of coming to, as Dan Pitt calls, a narrow waist, when you've got a controller in the middle, which has a set of intelligence, which you can plug into different services into it, it becomes a lot more important that all of the elements of your network will actually work with each other. And so the problem that we have today is not only do we have a whole bunch of different gear, a whole bunch of different services, but we actually have over 30 SDN controllers out in the world. At last count, I've counted almost 40 of them. The ONF on their website lists a whole bunch of them. And so what we need is a way to have a common platform for networking. A common platform so that end users are able to know that regardless of what solution they buy, it's going to work with everything else. So that they know that there is no risk of buying one solution and finding that it dies, that it doesn't succeed, that it gets orphaned because the vendor's priorities have changed. And this is what OpenDaylight's all about, creating a common substrate for the networking industry that everybody can build around. They can offer hardware on the bottom, services on top, or management and orchestration on the side, and then it'll work with the rest of your network.
Okay, now then, your community within OpenDaylight at the moment consists of 30 some odd ordinary members and 8, is it platinum level members?
Yeah, we have 33 members, of which 8 are platinum today.
Okay. Now, why do you have to have platinum and then the rest?
You're absolutely right. The community is the most important thing. And I'd actually say we don't have a community of 33 odd companies. We have a community of over 150 developers who are working on the project. Some of them want a leadership role. Some of them, this is so strategic and important to them that they want to make sure that the governance is one where this is a meritocracy of code. Others are willing, especially if you're a startup, if you have fewer resources, are willing to trust that the leaders are going to build the right type of community. And so what you see is a set of folks have stood up and been willing to support it financially, as well as with a minimum commitment of developers. And you really need a little bit of both. You need to have a great community. You need individuals whose salaries are being paid. You also need those individuals, more importantly, to be willing to work till midnight, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, to support each other and to get code out the door. So that's a level of commitment and investment that goes far beyond the vendor. You need startups who want to change the world, and you want existing players who want to make sure that if the world changes, they can still have a role and still have an influence in that world.
When you come to transformation, the kind of transformation we're talking about, which is a real, I don't want to say paradigm because it's so hackneyed, but is a tremendous change in the networking world, probably the biggest we've seen since telecommunications was invented 130 odd years ago. One way to transform is in the Thomas More utopian style, which is to say, this is the world that we envisage and we are going to get there now. Revolutionary. It's been shown many times that that doesn't happen. What's OpenDaylight's approach?
Right, I think that's a great question, which is how do you change? If you look at OpenDaylight, what this means for us is, on one hand, the ability to support the bold vision. One of the bold visions out there is tremendous centralization of intelligence. There's a group of people that believes that's where network's going to go. Are they right or not? I don't know. But I think it's a really interesting and bold vision. In OpenFlow, I think that the OpenFlow community really captures that, and you see a lot of people here talking about that. So you want to be able to support that. At the same time, we have to recognize that there's a whole set of gear out there that may not support, say, OpenFlow, that may still work in an old networking model. And in those cases, you want to be able to support customers there. So for us, we've built something called a service abstraction layer, the SAL. And what the SAL is about doing is to say, you can define your needs at the high level up here. Your needs for what is it that you want your network to do. And we're going to translate that to a set of specific actions down to the hardware that takes into account what specific hardware and what the limitation of that hardware, whether you're running on physical hardware or even virtualized hardware with the Open vSwitch.
So you have the best of both worlds, really. You've got the idealism, the wish for the utopian, and then down here you said, well, this is actually how you translate that into reality by doing it like this, like this, like this, like this, in steps.
And the last point I will make on that is, I think you have to do it in such a way so that you're open to the fact that you don't know how the world is going to be. So you have to build it in a way that's open, where someone can come in 2 years and go, you know what, no, that's wrong. Let me rewrite this piece of it, because in the future, actually, we're going to have this other gizmo in the network, and it's going to do everything. We're going to get rid of all load balancers and firewalls. That's just going to be direct programming of the network, for example.
Neela Jacques, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.